welcome back to the next one. So this episode is going to be about continuing on in the van after leaving my 10 days spent out in the forest. I'll put together a video so you can kind of see what I was seeing at the time, and I'm just going to be talking through what was going on and some of the thoughts that were going through my head at the time. Initially, after leaving the 10 days in the forest, I did stay at a KOA for a couple days, got that nice hot shower, got all cleaned up, filled up my tanks, dumped my tanks, charged my batteries, all that stuff that the van needed. And then I knew I wanted to head south in the direction of Padre Island and Corpus Christi, so I started heading that way. Along the way, there was a few places that I stopped. One of them was just a hike that I really just wanted to get a nice viewpoint. I'd kind of been in a forest for the last, over the past week or so. So I wanted to get up and do a hike and get some nice viewpoints and also get sweating a little bit just because I didn't really get a lot of exercise while I was out in the forest. I went on some walks and did a little bit of working out, but for the most part, didn't really get out too much, so I wanted to get sweat going. Did that at Enchanted Rock real quick, and then right next to that also is the city of Fredericksburg. I pulled into town at the right time, and actually this city was actually suggested for me to go check out by a Border Patrol officer who had stopped me and was actually just curious about what I was doing, and we were talking about, the van and what I was exploring, and he's like, well, if you stay in Texas for a while, you got to check out Fredericksburg. So luckily it was on the way. So right when I was pulling into town, it was really the perfect time. It's a German town, a festive sort of small town, nice for tourists actually, and one of my most highly recommended cities that I'd say in Texas. Right when I was pulling in, I parked the van and I started walking down on the main road, and I could tell everybody was kind of congregating in the direction of the city square. So I started walking over there and saw they had a bunch of Christmas trees and lights set up, and everybody had a big countdown from 10. And they turned on all the lights, kind of signifying the beginning of the Christmas season. So it was a really good time to show up there, actually. Like a nice little event was going on. Everybody was gathering together to celebrate.
3, 2, 1.
I spent probably, 3 or 4 hours in Fredericksburg, listening to some live music, and being that it's a German town, they got good beer. So I got myself a few beers and some German sausage, and just wandering around. They did have like these 3 random people standing in front of Chase Bank playing some folk music, which I thought was different. I like street performing music also. It's a different vibe than it is going and watching in a concert hall or something, It was cool folk music they were doing, I thought.
The wind was like, you only once, dear, you truly love me, and no one else could come between. But now you've left me and love another, and you have shattered all my dreams.
The thing that I liked most about this town, honestly, was that they had a candy shop, and I love candy. Well, I was a kid in a candy shop for sure. And that's probably where I spent the most amount of my money. Actually, I probably went a little too hard on it. But it's not often you see a good candy store anymore. So I figured I'd stock up and take that all with me. From Fredericksburg, I continued south in the direction of Corpus Christi. I didn't stay in town that night. I think I stayed at a rest area. And next morning, woke up and started heading down to Corpus Christi. And I knew Padre Island there had some free camping on the beach. So one of the apps that I use for traveling is called Free Roam. That tells you where all the free sites or free campsites are. So I used that, and it was highly rated out on Padre Island. I'd also heard that it was kind of a party place that people would go for, like, spring break or something. It's a nice place you can kind of get away and have some space. The shoreline there, it's like 60 miles. It's probably from the city of Padre Island. It's probably, 20 miles or so, maybe a little bit less, out to the actual shore. And then you can go 60 miles if you want down the shore. So I wouldn't go that far, obviously. I'd go a few miles down maybe, or like less than a mile, because I would use this bathroom that was right the road, right where the road meets the shore. They had a bathroom there that you could use, which was really handy. So I kind of had that within walking distance. There was also a visitor center a little bit up the road where they had showers, like push-button showers that were cold water. Not the most comfortable shower, but it was nice to have something there to get cleaned up, and I kind of had to do the Wim Hof and just tough out the cold water and get used to it. And it was actually really refreshing and nice. I did some skating in the parking lot there too. Out there, I had a lot of bonfires. That was the main thing, like, which I was just doing 10 days in a row. I had a bonfire every night out in the forest, and I just continued on doing the same thing. I love having bonfires. But being on the beach, there's not a ton of wood out there, especially because it's kind of grasslands. There's some driftwood that you could pick up and find, but for the most part, what I would do is during the day, as I was driving around town and exploring, I would just throw a bunch of wood in the back of the van and then bring that back to the shore at night, empty it all out, and have myself a nice fire, dig a hole in the sand, and have a nice fire out there. This was the first place out of 4 places that I got stuck on this trip. It was a weekend that was really busy out there. A bunch of people were camping out there, and everybody was kind of lined up in a row, except for this one guy was farther out in front of everybody, closer to the water. So as I was driving, he was kind of parked right in the road where everyone was driving, so it was either take a left and go into the ocean, or take a right and try to go around him in the deeper sand. So I took a right and tried to get around him that way, and I didn't make it. Didn't make it very far. And then, of course, he had to come over and tell me what I needed to do to get out. And I was like, dude, I do not need your advice right now. I would not be in here if it wasn't for where you were parked. I mean, I drove myself into it, I guess, but you were parked right in the way, and I do not need your advice right now. But luckily, luckily a Jeep came by and pulled me out within, 30 or 40 minutes or so. He was really helpful and nice, because I didn't even have a shovel. Like I talked about in the last episode, I broke my shovel on a tree. So all I had was the spade end of it that I was using to try to shovel out whatever I could, which doesn't work great. And eventually, at some point, that sand is so thick that you're just sinking down to the frame, and you just need someone to pull you out. And luckily, I had a guy there. I had a guy there that was helpful. But for the most part, there really wasn't a lot of people out there. There wouldn't be anybody. There wasn't really anybody close very often at all, other than busy weekends like that. Sometimes the weekends would fill up with people. I stayed there for probably, 2 or 3 weeks on and off or so. Spent a good amount of time there, but also some time near Port Aransas, which is right next to it, and actually even got to take a nice little ferry over there where you can just drive your vehicle right onto the ferry, and the ferry takes you across. And it's cool because one time I actually got to park right in the front of the ferry, so right in front of me was the water. Anyway, back at Corpus, or in Padre Island, it was great initially. I had bonfires every night. There was ocean and waves and open sky, stars. There was solitude out there. You're far enough away where no one's going to bother you, but you're also close enough where you can get back to civilization and use or get whatever you need. I did see a little bit of wildlife. I saw some deer out there. I saw a fox on the beach. It is really windy down there. It's known for being really windy. Padre Island is, and there was a few times that eventually I just had to accept the fact that there's going to be sand everywhere. It's either accept that or just be miserable, because at some point I'm just laughing because it's so intensely windy. And at this point, I guarantee there's still sand from that time in the van. At this point, there was so much all over the place. It was nuts. Just wind, it was like the ocean. The ocean's pulling in a bunch of air, and it kind of feels like a huge vacuum. Sometimes you're out there; it's so intensely powerful, and all this wind is being sucked out into the ocean. It's pretty aggressive. But you get used to it eventually, or you just get out of there and try to get back when you can. And I did spend New Year's out here. That was probably one of the most intensely windy nights. But it was great. I had drove over and I picked up some fireworks and I was blasting those off. But it was so windy that if I'd shoot up a bottle rocket or anything, it would just go up and immediately right into the ocean. Just like immediately littering. And I don't like littering. I normally wander around and pick up trash. But at this point, I'm here to blow off fireworks. There's nothing I can do. And, there's plenty of other people that are dumping a bunch of stuff out in the ocean. But I'm not trying to make that any worse. But it's just what the situation was. I wasn't going to not blow off fireworks. I spent a decent, not much time in Corpus Christi. Some of the most fun times over there was I went over and got some good sushi. I went down to the pier and did some longboarding with the Santa hat on and a red shirt and green pants. And it was right before Christmas, so I was just trying to spread some holiday joy. But eventually it started to seem like, living in a van down by the river isn't all it's cracked up to be. You can only live on a beach for so long before it's like, well, what am I doing, Wake up in the morning like, all right, well, what am I going to do today? And like the adventuring and exploring is fun and going seeing things, but what am I actually contributing? What am I actually giving back, you know. I'm 28 years old and I'm just going to be driving around and seeing this and seeing this and seeing this. Like what it's easy to look at this trip and like these travels, and for me for some reason it's easy to look at this and be like what's the point of any of this? Like I'm not giving anything back. I'm just getting these experiences. I mean, the experiences have values in themselves and you meet interesting people, see interesting different diverse things, but not having a job was something that was weird, you know. It's a lot of people dream about quitting their job and going and travel and doing all this, and that's what I did essentially. But it was weird noticing that I missed having a job. I think just like the stability, the routine, like the fact that I'm actually making money and I'm actually contributing to society in some way. And when you wake up in the morning and it's like, what am I going to do? It's like, I'm not exactly sure where to go. And that freedom seemed like to just kind of put me in a stressful state. Like I wasn't exactly sure where to go or what direction to point. And this is something I've talked about before, but I kind of started to fall back into another comfort zone here. I started drinking a little bit too much and smoking a little too much, and it kind of just had this cycle revolving around intoxicants and kind of just trying to forget it. And the comfort zone is kind of this place that you're comfortable and you're okay and you're getting by, but you're also just numb and kind of dull. And I could tell at this point that I needed something to focus on. I needed something to put my energy towards, or like the main thing I'm going to do in my day is collect wood so that I can have a fire. And that just doesn't seem like I'm actually giving anything back. I'm experiencing things, and I'm out here, and I spend a lot of time writing, trying to understand what's going on. And I was also planning on really like getting this podcast started and releasing some of my stories and what's been going on. But it was interesting to notice, that there was nothing there that gave me like feeling like I was contributing any value. I didn't really feel like I was living meaningful. Like what's the point of my existence in doing this kind of stuff? Writing was a really useful tool. I want to talk a little bit about writing because it's been really useful for me over the years. It's been a really useful tool for me over the years, and even still today. What I'll do normally is this: whatever thoughts stuck in my mind, whatever thing that's like plaguing me and giving me anxiety, or like just this thing that I can't get rid of, I'll sit down, open my notebook, and I'll write about it as fully as I can, as honestly as I can, as directly as I can. And that's something great about the journal is it gives you a place to be honest with yourself. A lot of people in this world don't have anyone they can be honest with, even if they've been married for 10, 15 plus years. They don't have anyone they can be honest with. So I look at the journal as this thing that I can do that with, especially because I'm out here kind of isolated with nobody around. It gives me a place that I can do that. And yeah, I got to look at like all these things, like these negative thoughts that were going on in my mind at the time. I was able to look at them and try to understand what's going on. The truth hurts, but the truth also sets you free. So I wanted to understand, what am I doing? What am I going to do? And what does the future actually look like for me? Because I don't want to be stuck in this place that I'm at right now. I've been planning getting the podcast going for a while and trying to figure out exactly what I wanted to do, and it's changed over time. I'm not even now, I'm not doing exactly how I imagined it at the start. But I needed something to contribute, and that seemed like at least something that I had to do, something to focus my energy on, something to focus my mind on, something to create, something to share, something to contribute. If anything, I have my story, and it's my own. Everyone's got their own story, and I'm going to try to find a way to share mine as honestly as possible, because there's something truly powerful about honesty. And I kind of wanted to see what it could do if I was able to find a way to express my thoughts and my ideas through this thing. But I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in the next episode when I actually got it off the ground. Because this one, the last thing I wanted to end this one talking about, well, there's a couple, actually, before I get to the last thing, there was another thing that I did that was useful for a stressful mind, I thought, because it's interesting. This was like probably the most stressful time of the trip altogether, of just kind of feeling isolated. Like, the solitude eventually turns into isolation, and it's a scary place to be, being alone for that long and kind of just feeling away from everything. But right around Christmas time, I went to church. And, that's when, if you don't really go to church, Christmas and Easter are the two times that you would do that. So I went over, and I grew up in the church. I grew up loving the church. I'm so glad that I grew up understanding these stories and learning what they have to say. And, But at some point, those stories kind of ran out, and not the stories ran out, but my interpretation of the stories and the way they were being explained to me ran out. And I started to get this frustration with church and people that were in. I saw the hypocrisy and the lies and like the things that were hidden. I didn't like it, and it didn't seem like we were getting anything. It just seemed like a lot of churches were just trying to sell you hope as a product. And it wasn't there. It didn't seem like deep enough. I don't know. There wasn't enough honesty. It seemed like, and the church that I went to here wasn't really much different, but it was very plastic feeling and like corporate kind of. They were just trying to sell you this product. It was really flashy and showy and a whole bunch of different speakers, all this stuff like all this stuff changing all the time, tons of different instruments. It was quite a production. It was nicely choreographed, but it just something about it just didn't seem right. And then I'm sitting in church looking at these people that are really into what the preacher is saying, and I'm like, how are you guys buying this? And now I just feel like an asshole because I'm this guy sitting in church judging everybody when we're all here trying to become better people, right? And overall, I mean, there's definitely value I see in going to church, because I think if you start to eliminate the value of what that is and eliminate the ideas behind religion and that are within religion, then you go down a dark path. But it was also like the way that it's talked about doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. And a lot of times when I go to like this kind of church, it's like they like putting down science and they're insulting that as if that's something that's you shouldn't waste your time on. Like this doesn't seem to be beneficial either, because I think there is some sort of conjunction between the two of them that can be useful to helping us get a better understanding of what's going on in the world. And I definitely left the church, even on some level. So you look at the church and it's like it's a beautiful communal place that people can come together and dress up nice, bring your families to this place where we're all striving to be good people. On some level, it's beautiful, and I think it's 100% true and accurate and inspiring, because even this church that was a bit plastic and frustrating, I was able to leave with my chest out farther, my shoulders back a little more, and just like a new sense of confidence that I didn't have before. So I thought that was interesting to see. Even this church that was frustrating for the majority of it, it was still a beneficial experience to go. There's still something inside religion that's like axiomatic to what it is, that's just beneficial generally, almost as like, no matter how fake it might seem on stage to me sometimes, it's still a beneficial experience to go. So that was definitely something that was inspiring and useful and noticeably useful for me. The last thing, though, I guess I want to talk about was at this time I wrote my first song that I ever wrote. I was playing guitar quite a bit at the time and like finding different ways to put chord progressions together, and that was fun, but I wasn't ever really singing my own songs or writing songs. And this one happened kind of just like a purge. I didn't really think about I didn't sit down and try to write this song. It sort of just happened. It just came out the way that it was supposed to. It was what was going on in my mind at the time. And I have recorded the song, and I'll put it together in another video if you're interested in checking that out. But it is a sad song. To me, it's a sad song because I was sad at the time. Honestly, this isn't the first song that I ever wanted to put out if I was ever to put music out, because it is, it's the first song I ever wrote, and it's sad and it's kind of simple to me, and kind of confusing in some ways. I don't know. I don't even need to talk about it too much. You can be the judge of what you think about it. But the initial inspiration for the song was two different things. At the time, my mom was actually, the inspiration came from my mom initially, where she was telling me she missed me a lot. And each time that she'd tell me she'd miss me, I just felt bad, like I couldn't be there to help and be around and to do, whatever tasks needed to be done. And when she would tell me she misses me, I would just have this reaction of like feeling bad about it. And we've had conversations. We had at the time conversations about this and continual conversations to sort this out and kind of get on the same page. And because eventually I was like talking to her and I was like, please don't tell me you miss me, because it makes me feel bad. Like I can't help. I can't do anything about it. But then I felt bad for asking her to not tell me she misses me, because who am I to control what she says? Like she's just being loving and kind, a loving and kind mother telling me that she misses me. And who am I to try to control somebody else's speech anyway? So these are conversations we had, and we progressed through it and came to understand it. But that was one of the initial inspirations to the song, is like feeling missed and not wanting to be told that I was missed. Because I do have this philosophy too, that I don't know if it's a philosophy, but I had this idea before I go traveling that it might be a negative way to look at it, but a lot of times when you go on these trips, you think that people are going to be interested in where you're going, but the reality is they're not. Like, they kind of just forget about you when you go, and and not like they don't care. It's just they have their own lives going on, so they're not really thinking about you as much as you might think they're going to. Um, which is great, which is fine. Keep doing your thing. It's just this thing where it's like you just seem like no one really gives a shit, and it can be a defeating thought. But at the same time, I'm like having this thought, but I'm also rejecting my mother telling me she misses me. Like, what am I doing? Another piece of inspiration for the song was the idea of change. One of the songs that was stuck in my head and that I played on repeat while I was out those 10 days in the forest was the song "Change" by NF. It's kind of this song just about knowing that we need change and craving change, but also avoiding it and running from it. And this interaction that we have with change is kind of a confusing one, because we all know that we need change in some ways, but we're so hesitant to do it, and we'll avoid it at any costs. Because change is hard. It hurts. It hurts to get rid of dead wood, but at the same time, if you don't get rid of dead wood, then nothing else new can grow. It's all part of the process. And I was at this time trying to understand exactly what I was looking to change, and trying to understand what that was. And just noting the fact that I am craving this. It's not like the world needs to change. Like, that's why this song is stuck in my head, because the world needs to change. No, the song is stuck in my head because I need to change. There's something in me that I need to change, and I'm trying to understand what that was. And yeah, so that was the two main inspirations to that song. So if you're interested in hearing that, I'll put that out separately with its own little video also. Let me know what you think about that. I guess the next episode is going to be about my time in the city of Port Lavaca mostly, which is where I got the podcast off the ground. I kind of just want to talk about what was going on in my mind at the time, and what the clarity of mind that kind of came from. It was like the rebound from being so down low at Padre. It was kind of a rebound on the other end in Port Lavaca. So that'll be the next episode. I talk about kind of what was going on at the time there. Other than that, if you like this, go ahead and like, comment, subscribe. You can check out my Instagram page if you like, at Adventures of Andrew B. Other than that, yeah, thank you for taking the time to listen, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day.